You are the best. You all know my 7-year-old grandson. I call him my best buddy, my little buddy. And I get excited when new things happen in his life. He went back to school for his second grade this past week. It was really kind of neat and exciting. He was all revved up for it. His mama takes, as she has done every year since he's been going to school, a picture on the front stoop with a little blackboard that has his name and his teachers and all that kind of stuff on that blackboard. And every year it's what does he want to be when he grows up. Every year it's different. This year he wants to be a geologist and a ninja. I don't know. So she takes that picture every year. The school sent out pictures of the first day of school. My wife and I picked him up. Grandma and Granddad took him to the playground after the first day of school. I took pictures of the playground. And, of course, we all post them online. Right? I mean, that's the fun thing. Well, listen, we love our kids. We love our grandkids. We want you all to know that. Then I came across an article by Laurel Cook, who is a social marketing and public policy researcher at WVU, who says maybe we should think twice about this. I wanted to learn more about that, so I invited her to come join us this morning. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. I really sincerely appreciate you for having me as a guest on your show. I'm excited to discuss this topic, especially because it really naturally invokes a range of different responses from parents and caregivers. So I'm hoping to shed a little light on kind of what I'm suggesting through some of our research findings.
Am I wrong? My daughter-in-law wrong posting the pictures first day? My kid's school even posted pictures. I posted pictures of the playground, playing on the playground. You're suggesting we need to be at least more thoughtful about how we do that. Is that right?
Absolutely. So being mindful about it is key. And most of that, I mean, what you've described is pretty innocuous, right? We're excited. It's the first day. We're trying to record this moment in our life. And that makes a lot of sense. And, again, the intention behind it in most of these cases is usually very innocent. But I would just suggest that parents and caregivers consider their audience. Because, if it becomes regular content that you're posting about your child, some unfavorable outcomes can result.
Such as? What are the things you worry about? And I know we'll probably have to go to the extreme to make the point, but what are concerns that you have? What can go wrong with posting a picture of my grandson online, for heaven's sakes?
I appreciate you asking that. So here's an interesting outcome that many people may not consider. So if you're posting content regularly and it's not privated, so for example, you're not posting these first day pictures to just your own personal private Facebook audience, for example, and you post regularly, so maybe here's day 1 and here's day 4 and here's next week and so forth, what you may not be aware of is maybe at the very baseline, other people online are forming what's called a parasocial relationship with your child. So you're not aware of, these strangers on the internet who regularly digest this content about your child, but they do so regularly and they feel like they know your child. And so this relationship, known as a parasocial relationship, is formed. And imagine what kind of outcomes can lead from that. We've seen cases where it's led to, the very extreme where children are kidnapped or taken, or maybe something a little less dangerous where these strangers on the internet will try to actively find where these children are physically located and try to, meet them at Kroger or, try to have some sort of real life exchange. And that can be very startling, of course, and quite scary for the child and the parent or caregiver. And it's all because, these strangers feel like they really know your child. And so you can see how something very innocent can lead to something that can put your child at risk.
It sounds like a Lifetime movie, but I guess these things really do happen.
They do, and, there are even worse examples. Two of the extremes I've studied in my research come from parents and caregivers who tried to become like mommy influencers or daddy influencers or family household influencers. And so they're paid through partnerships with a variety of brands to post content. And much of that content includes their children, of course, using and interacting with a service or product. And now we are seeing, this tie to content online that includes a child tied to actual money. And so we're seeing the behavior of these mommy and parent influencers becoming more and more egregious. For example, I saw one case where a mother was posting not just static images of her two daughters, but video content of her daughters too, and much of the content included trying on outfits, and it wasn't just normal outfits. It included swimwear and more risque clothing. She was posing them in, what I would suggest would be very, sexual poses, and it just became more and more alarming to see how the post kind of degraded and became far less innocent and far more stylized in a very specific way to garner more purchases of these strangers buying, photos and videos of your kids. We've seen other cases where, just so much content, parents are posting pictures of their children in bathtubs or in swimwear or visually altered in such a way to unnaturally enhance like a female child's body. And, that's why I suggest in my article that so much content from pedophiles or someone that might use that content for nefarious purposes, it comes for free from parents and caregivers who post this stuff online.
I wrestle with this ever since reading your article and talking to you a little bit, because I love to share pictures of my grandson. The audience I just, in fact, even he sometimes gets upset. He says, "Granddaddy, why do you have to tell everybody about me all the time?" So, I don't know. It is something in me that says, I want you all to see what this beautiful grandchild I have is. But I hear the things you're saying, and probably not a week goes by, there isn't a story about some kind of issue of pedophiles or adults stalking kids or kids being taken for sex trafficking. It's a horrible thing to say, but we have that in this region. And even as I understand it, sometimes child porn, they just look for they look for a sort of a template online,
exactly.
And they can take that and use it on child porn sites. So I wrestle with this because I want to share, but I hear the concerns you're raising.
Well, and it's not just that. We now have data from adults, who were formerly sharented about. So these are people above the age of 18 that can now share their side of the story about what life was like, constantly being photographed or videoed and all that content being put online, and most of their responses are very unfavorable. In many cases, this is where we're discovering that consent was not really given or it was pressured. And so, even if the content was totally innocent, you're just showing your child learning the ABCs, such regular, frequent, and non-consensual posts could be very harmful to the child, not just because you're disclosing maybe some personal information about the child, but because that content was not provided with their consent. So that's another element I make, or another point I make in my article about, it's so tempting. They're so cute, and we love these kids. And it's natural. We have bragging rights. You as a grandfather have serious bragging rights. You've earned that. And it's quite natural. But, again, that's that's not in any way, shape, or form wrong. I would just encourage parents to, number one, consider their audience. So I would suggest keeping that more private. Some platforms like Instagram or Twitter, even TikTok, if your accounts are not private, then any stranger can see that content. So maybe consider that first. In addition to considering whether or not your child is consenting, if they're able to.
Back in the old days, I'm old enough to remember the old days. I don't know that you are. Back in the old days, we just carried pictures of our kids in the wallet, right? and you go to a party and say, "Hey, have you seen my son or seen my grandson?" Or the new, and we would just sort of pass the pictures around person to person. But we're now in the age of mass social postings, and you say TikTok and Twitter and Facebook and all of those things, and we have become an unbelievably, maybe inappropriately, but certainly unbelievably sharing society. It's what we do. I mean, look, and my audience will tell you they get tired of it. I post pictures of my food every day. I mean, I'm one of those kind of guys. We just share. Here we are. Maybe we should just ratchet that back a bit in general.
Yeah, I would totally agree because, what I'm trying to really highlight is it's not just parents now. You've got the content that you might post about your sweet grandchild, but maybe his school is also doing that, or his service providers, like his medical provider might be posting images. And I say that because most service providers will presumably ask for consent. They'll have you sign a form that says it's okay for us to use images in promotional endeavors, and most parents don't realize what they're signing. But again, even that is indirect sharenting, and you're right. This environment of oversharing has kind of led to this preponderance of information about these kiddos online, and I think here's what I would suggest to your audience. If some of the content you're posting concerns PII, and that's personally identifiable information, so a child's location or where they're going to be, or obviously personal information about that child, their personal interests that are very, very specific. They're part of this XYZ club, or this is their birthday, or anything that can be used to identify that child. I might really double and triple check whether or not you want that information to be out there online. So definitely give that a second thought.
I remember a number of years ago, a federal prosecutor here in town did a presentation, which I watched, on how people can steal your identity and the little things that can help them to, if they choose to, if they're interested, if they want to focus on you, by showing pictures of what time your kids come to go to school and come from school. It gives them a sense of what their daily schedule is like. And the more, I mean, if people really want to find this stuff out, they build identity theft around little tidbits of data, little bits of data that they can add together, and the next thing you know, they've built identity theft. Or, again, even worse if it's someone who's a pedophile or what have you. But I remember watching that presentation from the federal attorney and thinking, I didn't realize how easy it can be to figure this stuff out. If I used to think identity theft, you had to steal my wallet. Then I began to realize, no, that isn't the case. So, and there's so, I don't want to criticize my daughter-in-law. I every year she has a little blackboard, and it has my grandson's name, and I'm in such and such a grade, and my teachers are such and such. And I'm thinking, maybe we do put too much information out there, Somebody takes one look at that and gets all kinds of information about that kid.
Exactly. And is that privated? Is it to that person's personal, private Facebook network? Or is it to the general internet online where any Joe Schmo online can find that out? And so the answer to that question really directs someone as to whether or not that content is appropriate. And you're right. You cleverly picked up on the fact that, now we're not just picking up demographic information about kiddos. Now we have psychographic, like their interests, their personality, and we have behavioral data too. And sometimes, the next evolution of my research is showing that this other data, the behavioral data, the psychographic data, is being used by companies now to persuade kids to make purchase decisions. So, all this data isn't just being used by individuals now. It's being used against children in a way to get them to use their parents' credit card to make unauthorized purchases or to tell a company what their personal interests are, or, to give away information that a parent otherwise wouldn't have wanted to be known.
You talk about something, I only have a minute or two left, but I wanted to ask you about this. You talk about something in the piece you wrote about dark design. What is that?
That's a really scary conceptualization of what I just described. So it's this design that's created with the intention of persuading behavior. So if I want you to do something, if I want you to opt in versus opt out, I might use elements of dark design to influence your behavior. And as you can imagine, it's especially effective for children, for minors.
All right, listen, I appreciate your information. I'd love to talk some more. I'm running out of time, but it's scary stuff, and nobody wants to hear this because we all want to just share everything we can about our little kids that we love, and yet, there's, and the first time a problem arises, we'll stop and say, "Damn, I wish I had paid more attention." So,
I would leave your audience with this: keep that content as private and to as small of a network as possible.
It's a good point, and I think many people don't bother to stop to think about how their various privacy settings are set for their Facebook and social media pages, and we just post them up there. Now, I'm a public figure. I keep everything public because that's by design. But I think maybe people need to start double-checking their privacy settings and saying, where do I want this information to be seen?
I agree. I agree.
If you're careful about your Facebook friends, and you have a list that you believe in, then just share that with friends. But if you share with the general public, you use an analogy in the article here. I forget exactly how you phrased it, but if we saw a guy hanging out across the street staring in our kid's bedroom window, we'd say, "Ooh, that's bad," right?
Yeah, I mean, imagine how quickly
in some
we
ways
would
this is the
react.
same.
Yeah, exactly. We would be up in arms, and rightfully so. So again, that's I think a helpful analogy to keep even me in check. I want to make sure that no creepy weirdo is poking their head in my child's window.
Dr. Cook, I appreciate your time this morning. Really good stuff. Again, people got to stop and think. We don't like to stop and think, and that's sad, but we need to. And there are ways to still share, but share safely. So people need to stop, think, consider. We're in that time of year right now where everybody's putting those back-to-school pictures up. Stop and think, how much do you want to share and how much do you just want to keep private? I appreciate your time this morning, though. Thank you very much. Yes,
it was my pleasure. Have a wonderful day.
All right, you too. Laurel Cook, Dr. Laurel Cook is a WVU researcher and marketing professor. And I came across an article she wrote about sharenting, which I have discovered is actually a real thing. Parents who share and maybe share too much. Now, I hear that all the time from you people, that I share too much. And she's got me thinking now, because Teddy has been telling me lately, not just the pictures I post, although he says, "Granddad, don't take any more pictures." But he even says to me anymore, "Bob, Granddad, why do you have to talk about me on the radio all the time?" Maybe he doesn't want that publicity. I think it's cool, but
well, I think he's in
maybe I listen to him more carefully.
I think he's in a time in his life where he wants a little privacy, Howard.
I think you might be right.
Listen to more interviews and rants from the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe on Apple Podcasts.